Hello all, welcome to Public Cloud Design Tips and Tricks again. As a part of our Azure security, today I'll be covering the session 4 on Azure security, and I'll be covering storage security in this session, Azure storage security. So the problem statement is same. What are the practices available in Azure cloud to secure the ecosystem? And I have already explained there are six technical blocks that is aligned with cloud security, Azure cloud security, application storage, networks, operations, computer identity. And today we'll be discussing more on the storage level security. Responsibility metrics we have already discussed in our first session, more from a vendor, customer, and hybrid perspective. And so I'm not covering this in this session. And let's start with the storage as a part of Azure security. And the first one is shared access signature (SAS). So shared access signature provides a consumer to access the storage account in Azure to do different operations. For example, storing of data, alteration of data, those kind of things a consumer does on top of a storage account, and that happens through shared access signature as a identity mechanism, basically. Okay. Now, SAS deal with three aspects primarily, and what are those? And those are which content of the storage to be accessed, what permission to be provided to the consumer, and the time frame of the access. So these are the three aspects it covers. And just to reiterate, storage account is a service from Microsoft Azure, and that is responsible or that enables the consumer to store and you know uh, work on the data basically. So that is what is storage account is, and SAS is one of the way or one of the way a consumer can access the data in a storage account. Okay. Now coming to the type of SAS, there are three type of SAS basically. So the first one is user delegation SAS, and that is only applicable for blob storage. And ADLS Gen 2 is it's a more a flavor of Azure storage, Azure blob storage again. So it's primarily used for data engineering, where data services like Data Factory or Databricks comes into picture. And user delegation is always secured by an Active Directory, because the Active Directory is responsible to generate a federated token for the consumer who is going to create a SAS token, and that SAS token is gets created by a key, basically a delegation key. And the delegation, once you have the delegation key, or once the consumer have the delegation key, then he or she can, or it can creates a SAS token especially. Okay. And once you have a SAS token, then proper RBAC role can be attached to do different operation on the storage account. Now, how does the flow work? We have already discussed a little bit. There are a few steps basically. So here, technically, if you see uh, a user or a service who is trying to access a storage account needs an identity. Okay, to connect to that storage account. And here, basically, before you start connecting the storage account, you have to generate a SAS key, and to generate a SAS key, you need a delegation key basically in the user delegation method. And to have a delegation key, you need a identity basically to have a delegation key, and that is all gets registered, or gets provided by the Azure Active Directory basically. Okay, so before you start connecting to Azure Active Directory for that specific purpose, you need a RBAC permission on the consumer side, and once you have it, once that is done, the consumer or identity can get an OAuth token from Azure Active Directory. Okay, now once that token obtained, then the consumer or the user can get a delegation key with a REST API call. Okay, and once you have the delegation key, then that key is used to create a SAS token to connect to the Azure storage. And of course, when you connect to Azure storage account, you need RBAC permissions, okay, to do different operation on top of a storage account. So on a nutshell, these are the simple flow where you can use user delegation key. Okay. If you want to know more about it, you can always follow the Microsoft link. From there also, I have given all the informations of user delegation key. Okay. Now there are two other types: service SAS and account SAS type. Now, what is a service SAS? Service SAS is used to storage account key for further access to any one of the storage service. So basically, the service SAS is nothing but an key basically that is used to connect to either one of the services like blob, table, queue, or Azure files. Okay, so what it means is the user can have any one of the services that can be accessed by the user with definite permissions. Okay, so that is where service SAS is used. Account SAS is also say similar to service SAS. The only difference is account SAS can provide you an opportunity to connect to different Azure storage flavors at one go actually or simultaneously. For example, you can connect to blob, table, queue, Azure files at one go actually, which is not possible in service SAS. So this is the only difference between service SAS and account SAS. So in a way or practically, if you go to Azure portal and you will just try to generate a SAS key basically to connect to these particular flavors, then account SAS will provide you four simultaneous URI with this token to connect to those, whereas a service SAS will only provide a single URI or URL for either for blob, table, queue, or files. So that is the difference. Now coming to data encryption for storage accounts. So this is a primary requirement to achieve security on the Azure storage level. Now this data encryption in Azure storage is divided into two types. One is transit encryption and the other one is encryption at rest. Okay. Now coming to transit encryption, where it occurs, let's say a consumer is sending some data to a storage account. So definitely the data will flow over the network, and that is where it comes into picture. So there are few practices that are available to secure the data while in a transit. So use HTTPS when data is transferred to Azure storage account. Use wire level encryption, which is SMP 3.0 for Azure file transfer, and use client and encryption. Okay, just to avoid a plain text data transmission over the wire. Okay, so these are the few practices available for to secure data at transit level. Now coming to the second one is encryption at rest. So use Azure SSE server side encryption. The data can be encrypted automatically while it gets stored. Data also can be encrypted using customer managed key or customer provided key. Okay, so customer managed key is always a cloud driven approach, and customer provided key is where customer is providing its own key to have the encryption done. Okay, at the storage end site actually. Now appropriate secret management can be done for the above requirement. Definitely once you have a key created, encryption key created, it should be stored somewhere, and where appropriate secret management in this case of Azure, it's more a storing the data, storing the keyword with version in the keyword basically. So that is what secret management to achieve the data encryption end to end. So that is all about data encryption. Coming to storage analytics, what it is, it provides a detailed traceability. Sorry for the typo here. It's a traceability for storage account operations. So we do a lot of operations on the storage account, storing a data, updating a data, deleted all these things. So this provides a traceability basically, and it also helps to analyze a common pattern or behavioral pattern for the access. So that is what it comes with. Now, storage analytics can be done through portal or using programs. So it can be done using a portal, or you can, or a developer can use the SDK way of doing programmatically to to have these storage analytics. Okay, programmatically. Now the REST API available for various services with storage are set within set blob service properties, set queue service properties, set table service properties, and set file service properties. So if you go into that, you can always have storage analytics latch explicitly into Azure storage accounts or Azure storage account flavors basically, the blob queue table file. Okay. Now, once the property is enabled, actually, you have to explicitly enable this property using those set properties, and once that is enabled, the data can be stored in blob file. So here, what is the data? It's all the activity data. So what is happening on top of the storage, that also can be stored in a blob file. Okay, now once you store the data in a blob file, all the activity matrix, then you can aggregate the data, and that can be analyzed for further behavioral or analytical requirements. Okay, now the storage of those data can go till 20 TB. Okay, for the analytics services. So that is more how to scale those traceability matrix. So the, till 20 TB you can store, okay, with the storage analytics capability. So just to keep in mind, you have to explicitly enable this capability to storage account. Now, this is not very new. I mean, the developers who works on the web applications or web services basically. So, CORS stands for Cross Origin Resource Sharing. So, it provides a permission to both the consumer and the provider, okay, to to access the data basically. Okay, I mean, consumer and resources to access the data. Now it is a header based approach to identify a specific domain, whether it is allowed to access the other domain or not. Okay, so it's more about a kind of a permission to, or kind of a like granting someone to access the server side resources. Okay, so uh, that's why it's the server side data, basically server side resources, and the server in returns allows the scope to access the data in response. So basically, it's fast. The consumer with the domain name in the header, it talks to the server side, and server side in response will allow what all things the consumer can do on top of a server side resource. Okay, so that is why the server in returns allow the scope to access the data in response. The scope in this case, for example, in a REST API call, like post, action, put, all those things are the scope. What the consumer can do on top of a server resource. Now, Azure storage account supports course check also. So that is what here I mean to say is Azure storage. It always works as a URL in the end, and that also supports the course check. Okay, so by enabling this, the same fundamental works here is a part of course check. Okay, so this is, I have just given one screenshot, that once you have a storage account, you can always enable the course here, and can provide the allowed operations that can be done on top of the storage account. So so these are the four or five primary aspects to have a secured way of working on top of a storage account, or on top of your data basically. And if you want to know more about it, you're always welcome to go to the Microsoft sites mentioned here, and you can deep dive more into that. Thank you, and have a great day for today. Okay, thank you.